Right now, guns in America after Tucson, Aurora, now Newtown. Will we finally really see any changes? And how many more towns have to become synonymous with shootings before America really decides to go in another direction? And next, today, the Jersey boys' big day. But during today's State of the State, we saw less adversarial Governor Christie than usual. Is this just the election version of the governor, or post-Sandy have things really changed in the Garden State? And later, yes, my embarrassing Jets. Coach Ryan here took more than a little bit of time here to finally get in front of the cameras, and what he said, once again, had more than a few folks shaking their heads. We'll have that as well. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, January 8th. Now, if you took a quick scan of the news today, you might have noticed more than a bit of a somber theme here. Story after story, we're about the dominant subject today, which again is guns. Just over 3 weeks have passed since the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, and still the nation with more questions than answers. And meanwhile, today also marks the 2 years since the Tucson shooting, which left 6 dead and 13 wounded. And among the wounded were Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. And after a long and a painful recovery, she and her husband, they're now fighting back, saying Newtown, it was a turning point for them.
First couple that we spoke to, Dad took out his cell phone and showed us a picture of his daughter, and I just about lost it. And I have a gun. Gabby and I are both gun owners. We are strong supporters of the Second Amendment, but we've got to do something to keep the guns from getting into the wrong hands.
When it can happen to children in a classroom, it's time to say
enough.
Meanwhile, today, the second day of preliminary hearings for James Holmes. He's the man accused of killing 12 in a bloody rampage at a Colorado movie theater. Yesterday's testimony, it was vivid, as law enforcement officials described the bloody scene and their attempts to rescue victims. Veteran Aurora cops, they broke down in tears on the stand as they recalled unimaginable horror, including blood-soaked aisles and motionless bodies lying on the floor. Officer Justin Grizzle, he drove 6 victims to the hospital in his police car on 4 separate runs, saying, quote, "I knew I needed to get them to the hospital now. I didn't want anyone else to die." He said you could hear blood sloshing in the back of the patrol car after making those trips. Well, that is the scene and the descriptions we hear from one side of this conversation in America. Then you get to the other side, and then this is what you hear.
Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? And that's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Yes, we have guns in order to control the government.
And when you decide when the government's done wrong with your gun?
Well, when they steal elections.
No, when you decide
that's what
who
happened
stole an election.
In Athens, Tennessee, elections were stolen, and that's when the people knew that the line had been crossed.
Well, we hear.
Now, that last guy, Larry Pratt, the executive director of Gun Owners of America, says that gun control supporters are the ones with blood of little children on their hands. Those the words of Larry Pratt. And this the voice of the gun community post Newtown. Just so you know, Larry Pratt, for example, he's got more than 300,000 followers here, so this is not just some fringe guy. Apparently, he speaks for many people, and apparently people are listening. Gun purchases, they went up, not down, after the shooting in Newtown and in Stanford, which is only miles from the site of the Newtown shooting. A gun show went on this past weekend despite protests, and there was a line to get in. So if this is our reality, what is the way forward? Now I want to bring in our panel. Jessica Proud, Republican strategist, Vice President, NLO Strategies, one of her favorites. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. And next segment, guys, we're going to talk about messaging, and I know you do this for a living, where you have a candidate, you figure out the messaging and the marketing and the platform on how to get those out, and some interesting developments on that end for how the White House plans to try and rally support for this. But let's talk this segment about what they're going to be up against. And Dominic, you've got the Joe Biden working group here. They've already given an idea of some of the things they're going to be talking about, and we'll talk, like I said, as to how they'll do it. But it's interesting. I'm surprised a little bit. Only 3 weeks later, we're already hearing these clear battle lines again in this issue. And I would have thought it would have taken a while before people would have been as casual, in my opinion, about talking about blood and talking about rising up with arms to go after the governor or anybody with the gun grabbers, etc. The NRA's press conference I thought was pretty tone deaf. Are you surprised at the temperature here that we're hearing this debate at?
Surprised and saddened. We've seen this script, all of us have, no matter where we come down on this issue. We may all agree to disagree, but Richard, we've seen this script a million times before. Sadly, there's a tragic incident. We're told, almost like clockwork, now is not the time to discuss the politics of gun control. And then 3 weeks later for this to happen, with these nuts, and that's what they look like to me. I mean, you may say they're rational people. They look like, to me, they're helping my side of the argument for gun control because they look like stark raving nuts. But it's scary when you say to me that they have 300,000 followers. So I am a bit surprised, a bit shocked, but I'm more saddened than anything else.
And I thought at least, Jessica, and Lord knows, Andrew and I have sat at this desk here many times over the years talking about, whether it's Virginia Tech, whether it's Aurora, whether it's wherever, unfortunately, on the map, the Columbines, the Jonesboroughs, etc. But it did feel different this time. It still does. Absolutely. But as much as people, have issues with the gun lobby and everything, I thought there would be a different tack that they would take. And I thought when LaPierre had that press conference, and it got carried on every 24 hours, we took the thing live here in its entirety, that they'd be a different message out of that, because you already saw some lawmakers, including Republicans, saying, this is different now. These are 20 kids. But nothing really seemed to change from the messaging, and still the only thing I got out of it is more guns in more places.
Well, I think everyone can agree that the degree of this tragedy was just so strong that it took everyone a moment to pause and reflect. But you talk about, certain interviews or the spokesman for the NRA, but you have to look at where the public sentiment falls on this. And most public polling, in fact, everything that I've seen, shows that it is not overwhelmingly in favor of these strict gun control measures. People overwhelmingly want to see the current laws on the books more strictly enforced. They want to see mental health checks, background checks. There's areas where they do agree is the majority of Americans want the clips to be banned. So that's something that I think you might be able to find some common ground on.
There is division pretty
Right.
equally, Andrew, on the assault weapons ban, even, to Jessica's point. But I think at least, and again, we'll talk about the messaging and how it's delivered, I'm still surprised at the landscape right now, because everybody related, you don't even have to even be a parent to envision what happened that day, and we'll never forget that day. It's, I think in many ways, for a lot of people, it's kind of like those snapshots of 9/11. You'll know exactly where you were when you heard the story, you know exactly where you were when you saw the images. We all saw the little caskets. But yet the temperature's still loud again, and that's the part I'm surprised about.
I'm actually a little bit surprised that you all are surprised by all of this. We have seen this, as you've said, so many times. Was it not tragic enough on Virginia Tech when they were college students? Is it tragic enough after Newtown? I mean, we have these tragedies one after the other, and it doesn't seem to shake our hold on guns or guns hold on us. And the hyperbolic noise that's coming from both extremes isn't helping the conversation. When you have, and I'll target the side that you and I have supported more often, when you have the anti-gun folks coming in with all sorts of restrictions, any manner of restrictions, it stokes the fear from the people who are gun enthusiasts that you're going to take your guns away, which clearly this nation doesn't want. And when you have the hyperbolic rhetoric from gun rights supporters who we just heard from, that scares the people on the left. And so you wind up, like we have in our greater political chasm, further to the extreme. When the conversation needs to be in the middle, we really need to figure out what we want our future with guns and gun laws in this country to be. We need sensible, rational people in this conversation.
100%. I don't think you look at it in a vacuum of just saying gun control, but that you cannot look at it that way. And I thought that actually the White House, with their group, they've invited a representative from the NRA. They've invited someone from the entertainment industry. So like I said weeks ago about this, if you're going to approach this debate from the same old standpoint where everyone goes from their corners, you're going to be met with a brick wall and nothing's going to get done.
And those advocating for gun control have to realize that people have a libertarian desire to not have the government tell them what they can and can't have, and that has to be incorporated into it. And gun advocates have to realize that the people calling for gun control are terrified, and both sides need to be accommodated.
All right. Well, I want to give a programming note here. Larry Pratt, that last gentleman that you heard on, he will be on our program tomorrow on RFL. And I can just tell you now, I'm going to approach it. I've had many pretty spirited fights, debates, whatever you want to call it, with Larry over the years. But tomorrow I'm going to really try and find out from him, where is his line? And if there is a line at all. Because I think everybody at this table, we might have it in the margin a little bit, forgetting our politics. We all, it's got that smell test. We kind of know where it is. I think there's some people in this country who are so far off the radar that we get lost in the Second Amendment. And we'll have that conversation tomorrow. The audience can see it for themselves. All right, when we come back, though, as Jessica said, the White House is trying a different approach to this. And the clock's ticking. Before the end of this month, they're going to lay something out here. And the question is, what and how will they sell when it comes to gun reform to the American public? And who will they enlist to help get that message across here and get D.C. to take some action? We'll be right back after this.